All right, so if you've been following this channel, you know that this is a Carlos Sainz stand channel. We love Carlos Sainz here. I think that Carlos Sainz might be the best driver on the grid. I think that in equal machinery, Carlos Sainz might beat Max Verstappen. And I think that next year we're going to be able to put that to the test because next year I think that Red Bull is going to sign Carlos Sainz. Checo's been on the hot seat for 2 years now, pretty consistently. But the problem is that like he just never really had they just never really had like a better option besides Checo. This year, Carlos Sainz is out of a seat. Carlos Sainz is the only non-Red Bull driver to win a Grand Prix in the past 2 seasons. I think besides George, I think him and George are the only two non-Red Bull drivers to like win period in the last 3 years. So Carlos Sainz being available, definitely Christian Horner is going to be scooping him up. And so the big question is, where does Checo go? Because the problem is like they don't actually have a lot of options. By the way, sorry about this being in Portuguese. I'm in Brazil right now, so we're gonna be reading stuff in Portuguese, but the names are all in English, right? So where does Checo go? By the way, a lot of people hate on Checo. I think Checo's great. I think Checo is one of the best drivers on the grid. People forget that Checo, like he finished fourth in a Racing Point team where the car was not that good, and he finished fourth. He didn't luck into this. Like Checo's a good driver, and he deserves a good seat. But I don't think he's gonna get one because there aren't really that many good seats available. So let's go through them, right? So if he's losing the Red Bull seat, he obviously can't go to Red Bull, right? Ferrari. The reason why Carlos Sainz is leaving Ferrari is because Ferrari's not available. They're getting Lewis Hamilton, which by the way I think is such a hilariously terrible move because like Ferrari for the first time in like a decade is finally functioning. Stuff is finally like going well for them. Like they could easily look, they're 21 points behind Red Bull after 4 races. Like they could easily compete with Red Bull. But I think Lewis Hamilton's washed. Like he's getting beat by George, and like yeah, I know there's like he's like allowed George to pass him, but like he's allowed George to pass him because he knows that he's washed. He's not. Anyway, so Ferrari's off the table. McLaren, like, there's always the possibility. Like Helmut Marko's been talking a lot about how he wants to sign Lando Norris. I think Lando just signed a huge extension, but you know, those pieces of paper don't mean anything. So Lando Norris could always go to Red Bull. I think that like if Lando's available, I think they take Lando over Sainz, but I don't think Lando's gonna go. And I think that obviously McLaren has Piastri. They're very happy with him. Like they just have a good core. They basically have Sainz and Leclerc minus 5-6 years, right? And like that's what you want. You want like a good two drivers. So McLaren's off the table. Mercedes, they've made it very clear that they want Kimi Antonelli in that seat, and I like it. Just the logical thing. They're not going to be competing next year. As the red flag pod guys said, like, why would you put him in a Williams when you just put him in the Mercedes? Like, he's gonna like, it just makes no sense. So Mercedes is off the table. Aston Martin, unless Alonso retires, which he very well could. I don't think that that's on the table. Just because they only have one seat available because of Lance Stroll. I guess they could theoretically go for Sainz. If they do, then that leads the Red Bull seat is now open, right? But I think that they then go full court press on Lando, and then Sainz goes to McLaren. Anyway, now we're going down the line. Red Bull number 2 obviously is not an option. Haas and Williams don't have the money. Alpine is French and is just like a completely dysfunctional shit show. Speaking of dysfunctional shit shows, I got that fly. Ever since I'm traveling, I'm really good at catching flies. Like I can get them like 90% of the time. So Sauber's like the only team that's left. And the question is like, do you really want to go to Sauber? Yes, you really want to go to Sauber. And here's why. Because Sauber is basically like they're going to be owned by Audi next year or in 2 years, and they're basically just going to be Mercedes 2.0. where they're just going to pour a huge amount of money into the team. The problem, though, is that because of the cost cap, they can't really be Mercedes 2.0. Like, they would have put Mercedes money, like Mercedes 2015 money into the team if they could, but they can't. But they're going to be putting as much of a cost cap as they can, plus the Christian Horner pickle budget if they can figure out. Germans are good at accounting, so they'll be able to hide the pickles pretty well. So Sauber has a lot of money. They're looking for two good drivers. They have Valtteri Bottas, but they're not going to be sticking by Zhou Guan Yu if they get Checo Perez available. And I think that it's a very convincing pitch to Checo. It's like, look, A, you get a spot on the grid. B, this is the best available spot. Like if I was an F1 driver and I couldn't get a spot in the top 5 teams, Sauber's where I want to be, because Sauber is going to be a contending team soon. So to be honest, I think that Checo goes to Sauber. I think he has a terrible year next year. People are like, oh, Checo's washed, because they're idiots. They don't know shit. And then the next year they become Audi. They get a shit ton of money poured in. He has another off year as they're transitioning, and then I think 2027 Checo starts to rack up some points. I think he might even win one or two, and people are gonna say like, hey, Red Bull made a bad decision, but then we're gonna have Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz is going to win the World Drivers' Championship if he's in a Red Bull. Like next year. I don't know what Red Bull's going to look like in 10 years, but if he's in Red Bull next year, he's winning the World Drivers' Championship. And here's the thing. If he does, and you're watching this, A, you need to subscribe. B, you need to get 10 people to subscribe. Because that's how amazing I am to predict that. Do you know who else is predicting that? Nobody. Nobody is predicting that. So if I'm right, and I'm going to be right, 10 people. You plus 10 people subscribe to this channel. In fact, just do that now. Like, don't be a little bitch. Okay? Don't be a little bitch. Subscribe. Get people to subscribe. Come on now. What are we doing here? Anyway, I think there should be a subscribe button somewhere here. So click that. Subscribe. In a year and a half, when Carlos Sainz wins the World Drivers' Championship, you can unsubscribe, resubscribe, get 10 people to subscribe, get 20. Stop being a little bitch. Anyway, that's my F1 video for the day. I'm happy being here alone on Sainz Island. I'm happy because I'm just gonna be right. Like, I was right about Melbourne. Were you right about Melbourne? No. You guys probably didn't even think that was possible.